There used to be a kind of man who occupied every serious room in every serious era of human history. He didn't perform outrage, didn't perform excitement, didn't perform humility. When he spoke, the room quieted, not because he demanded it, but because his words carried weight. And weight is rare enough that people lean toward it without thinking about why. That man has mostly vanished from public life. In his place stands someone restless, ironic, endlessly self-aware, terrified of ever getting caught believing anything too sincerely. So it's worth asking the unfashionable question: where did the serious man go, and what exactly did we lose the day he disappeared? Start by clearing up what seriousness actually meant, because the modern version of the word is a misreading of the original. It was never about being humorless or grim. Aristotle described a virtue he called Megalopsychia, usually translated as greatness of soul, a man secure enough in his own worth that he had no need for constant validation, no need to perform for an audience, no need to laugh at things he didn't find funny just to belong. He was careful to say this wasn't arrogance in any meaningful sense. The great-souled man was measured, restrained, and fully aware of his own limitations. What he lacked was the anxious, twitchy need to be liked by everyone in the room. Seriousness, in its original sense, was simply the outward sign of an inward stability, a man whose sense of self didn't require constant external confirmation to keep standing. Part of the disappearance is structural, and it has to do with how communication itself has changed. For most of human history, people talked inside small, stable communities where reputation took years to build and carried real, lasting weight. A man's word meant something because the people around him would remember it for decades, sometimes for a lifetime. The internet flipped that arrangement almost overnight. Communication now is high volume, low context, and mostly disposable. A statement made online exists for a few hours of attention before it vanishes under the next wave of content. In that kind of environment, sincerity is a liability rather than an asset. If nothing you say is remembered for long, there's little incentive to weigh your words carefully, and enormous incentive to say whatever produces the fastest emotional reaction. A man who speaks slowly and rarely is structurally disadvantaged in a system engineered to reward speed and volume over weight. There's also what the sociologist Erving Goffman called the presentation of self in everyday life. The idea that people constantly perform curated versions of themselves for different audiences, managing impressions the way an actor manages a role. Performance itself isn't new. Goffman was writing about it decades before social media existed. What changed is its permanence and the size of the audience watching it. A man in a small village performed for maybe 100 people who knew him deeply enough to eventually see past the performance to whatever was underneath. A man online performs for thousands of strangers who will never see anything but the performance itself. Under that kind of pressure, a lot of men stop being able to tell the mask from the face beneath it. Irony stops being a rhetorical tool and becomes a permanent psychological posture, a way of never fully committing to a belief so the belief can never be used against you later. The serious man commits. The ironic man hedges, and hedging enough times eventually hollows out the very capacity for conviction. I think about this most in workplaces, honestly, because it's where the stakes are smallest and the pattern is still visible. Picture someone who used to run meetings with real, unhurried authority, the kind of person colleagues trusted because he rarely spoke unless he had something worth saying. As the company's internal culture drifted toward constant messaging, quick reactions, and a steady stream of jokes in every channel, he started feeling pressure to match the tone instead of standing apart from it. He began softening every directive with a joke, undercutting every serious announcement with a wink, worried that plain, unguarded speech would read as pompous or out of touch. A few years into it, his team noticed something strange. They couldn't tell anymore when he actually meant something. Nobody took his authority away from him. He gave it away himself, one ironic aside at a time, trading the weight of his word for the comfort of never sounding too intense. Not everyone makes that trade, even under real pressure to. There's a familiar arc with writers, too. Someone builds a career on sincere, well-researched opinion, gets told by editors or by the market that sincerity reads as naive, that audiences respond better to knowing detachment, to the safety of never seeming to care too much about anything. Over a few years, the tone shifts, reflexive irony creeping into everything, a joke hedging every claim so there's always an exit if the opinion turns out unpopular. The engagement numbers go up. The writing goes weightless. People who used to quote the work in serious conversation now just share it for a laugh and move on within minutes. That's permanence traded for reach, and the trade is usually only visible after the fact. Once you notice you can't write a paragraph anymore without instinctively undercutting it. The muscle atrophies from disuse, the same way any muscle does. Kierkegaard had a name for the underlying condition. He called it the aesthetic mode of existence, a life organized entirely around the pursuit of novelty and the avoidance of boredom, a way of floating across experience without ever committing deeply to any single value, relationship, or belief. He set it against the ethical mode, where a person makes binding commitments and stands by them, even when doing so is inconvenient or unfashionable. A life spent entirely in the aesthetic mode, he warned, eventually produces a specific kind of despair. A man so practiced at not committing that he loses the very capacity to do so. Endless scrolling, endless options, and endless plausible deniability have more or less industrialized that mode, and a lot of men have been trained by it to treat conviction itself as a kind of embarrassing vulnerability. There's a status logic underneath all of this too, and it isn't flattering. In a stable social hierarchy, a man's seriousness was itself a status marker, proof that he had earned the right to be taken at his word. In an unstable, rapidly shifting hierarchy, where yesterday's respected opinion can become tomorrow's public humiliation, sincerity becomes dangerous precisely because it exposes a fixed target. Irony, by contrast, functions as armor. A man who never fully commits to a position can never be fully wrong. And in an environment where public wrongness carries disproportionate social cost, the incentive structure quietly pushes an entire culture toward permanent, protective detachment. What looks like a personality trait is often simply a defense mechanism, scaled up to the size of a whole generation. Nietzsche called the coming type the last man, a civilization so thoroughly optimized for comfort and safety that its members lose the capacity for genuine risk, genuine passion, and genuine greatness, content instead to blink at one another and ask what there is to laugh about next. He didn't mean this as a prediction of stupidity. The last men, in his description, are often quite intelligent, quite comfortable, and quite pleasant company. What they lack is the willingness to be embarrassed for something they actually believe in. A culture made up mostly of last men produces endless commentary and almost no conviction, endless reaction and almost no creation, because creation requires exactly the sincerity that irony was built to avoid. It would be a mistake, though, to picture the serious man as simply stern or cold. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire under constant external threat and still wrote some of the gentlest, most emotionally honest private reflections to survive from the ancient world, admitting fear, grief, and doubt with total candor because he had no audience to perform strength for. His seriousness wasn't the absence of feeling. It was feeling without the theatrical distortion that public performance almost always introduces. The genuinely serious man is often more emotionally available than the ironic one, precisely because he hasn't spent years training himself to deflect every sincere impulse before it reaches the surface. Harry Frankfurt, in his short essay on the subject, drew a sharp distinction between the liar and what he called the bullshitter. The liar, Frankfurt argued, at least respects the existence of truth enough to deliberately contradict it. The bullshitter has no relationship to truth at all, speaking only to produce an effect, indifferent to whether the words correspond to anything real. Frankfurt thought a culture flooded with bullshit is, in some ways, more corrosive to genuine discourse than one flooded with lies, because a lie can eventually be checked against reality, while bullshit was never trying to match reality in the first place. The death of the serious man is, in large part, The rise of a culture optimized for exactly this kind of indifference, where the question is never whether a statement is true, only whether it performs well. Recovering seriousness doesn't require giving up humor, warmth, or lightness. Plenty of genuinely serious people are also funny. The two were never opposites, whatever the last few years have suggested. What it requires is something harder, the willingness to occasionally say a true thing plainly, without the protective cushion of irony, and to let that statement stand exposed to judgment without a joke waiting in reserve to soften the landing if it doesn't go over well. It requires choosing, at least sometimes, permanence over reach, depth over volume, and the discomfort of being fully seen over the safety of being merely watched from a distance. None of this gets easier with practice so much as it gets more familiar, the way any uncomfortable thing does once you've done it enough times. The serious man isn't dead because the world stopped needing him. If anything, the world needs him more than it did, precisely because so few people are willing to be him anymore. He's dead because a lot of people, quietly and gradually, found it easier and safer to stop being him, one hedge and one joke at a time, until the habit of sincerity simply atrophied from disuse. Reviving him doesn't take a grand gesture, a manifesto, or a rebrand. It takes the smaller, harder decision to mean what you say, and to keep meaning it after the room has stopped watching, after the joke would have been easier, after silence would have cost nothing and truth costs something every single time.